WDET is supported by the College of Business Administration at University of Detroit Mercy. UDM's Master of Business Administration is designed to accommodate the career needs of professionals across a variety of work organizations. More information at business.udmercy.edu.
It's the Metro on 101.9 WDET FM. I'm Tia Graham.
And I'm Nick Austin. Today on the program, as we kick off the NFL draft in Detroit tonight, ever wonder the story behind those giant photos you see of Lions players on all of the buildings downtown? We'll talk to the photographer behind the portraits later this hour.
But first on the Metro, the Detroit Wayne Integrated Health Network has been busy over the past year. The department has put more staff into the field to help those struggling with mental health issues. It's also expanded its outreach to teens and even asked them to be a bigger part of the department. And as of 2 weeks ago, the Health Network Agency opened its 707 Crisis Care Center. The center, located on 707 West Milwaukee in Detroit, is meant to provide direct, specialized care for those in crisis and to ease the pressure off emergency departments. To talk more about this, we have Grace Wolf here. Grace is the Vice President of Crisis Services at the Detroit Wayne Integrated Health Network. Grace, welcome back to the Metro.
Hi, thank you so much for having me.
So, the Integrated Health Network, it tries to assist a lot of people with mental health issues. What's the purpose of this center and what services will you all be providing?
So at our 707 Crisis Care Center, we will be providing both child, adolescent, and adult crisis services. So we have an adult crisis stabilization unit that serves individuals 18 years or older that may be in a mental health or substance use crisis. And then our child and family crisis unit serves individuals that are from ages 5 to 17 that may be in a mental health or substance use crisis. We are aiming to serve individuals 24/7, 365.
And, you know, when we think about the term crisis, of course, how would we define crisis, especially in your case with the 707 Crisis Care Center?
You know, I think that's one thing that's really unique about behavioral health services is that we don't define the crisis. The person who is experiencing the crisis defines it. So that can be anything from feeling like you may want to harm yourself or someone else, feeling like you are experiencing psychotic symptoms, you may be experiencing grief or loss. You may also be utilizing substances and seeking detox services. Really, the crisis is defined by the person, and we're just here to help.
And, you know, oftentimes I think about that, and I think about, you know, someone who is going through something and they're trying to explain it to a family member or someone around them. How do you, how would you tell family members or people around someone who is going through a crisis? What should they do, especially getting them to the 707 Crisis Care Center?
Yeah, so if a family member is not sure where to turn, you can always call our 1-800 number, 1-800-241-4949, and we can help get you connected to resources. I know previously I've been on here speaking about our mobile crisis team. Our mobile crisis team serves all of Wayne County, all ages. And so they can certainly go out to your home or the park or wherever you may be located and help get you connected to the 707 Crisis Care Center if that's the most appropriate place for you. But also you can walk in directly to 707 and receive services. So really we're hoping to make our services as accessible as possible to all families in Wayne County.
And just kind of staying on that note really quick, or, you know, for a little moment, what would you tell family members as well how do they facilitate or help someone who is in a crisis or telling them they're in a crisis, or maybe even the family member is noticing things and the person may not want help or may not ask for help? So how do you also, you know, go bridge that gap, and how do you tell families to facilitate that?
Yeah, so, you know, our families and natural supports and loved ones around us are usually the ones that notice something or a change first, right? And so we really want to get these resources out to everyone so they know that they're available, because one of the hardest things to experience is your loved one going through something and you don't know how to help. And so that's why we're, you know, trying to really put the word out there about our services and about what you can do, because truly our services are easy and as accessible as just walking up to the front door or just picking up the phone to call us. And then we'll work with you and kind of do the legwork and the hard part to make sure that person gets what they need.
So back to 707 Crisis Care Center, how many patients can it hold, and what are we looking at in terms of staffing?
So we have 32 beds in total, so that covers both our child, adolescent, and adult services. And our staffing pattern is a multidisciplinary team. So we have psychiatrists, nurse practitioners, our registered nurses, clinical social workers, and other licensed clinicians, peer support specialists, individuals with lived experience, behavioral health techs. We have a really wide range of staff so that we can ensure that no matter what the need is, there's someone there that can help you. There's someone there that can relate to you. There's someone there that can empathize with you. And that is a staffing pattern that we hold 24/7. As I mentioned, we are a full walk-in center where you can come and receive services at any time. And so we make sure that we have staff there and always available to you.
And the Detroit Police Department, you all are working directly and closely with them. How often do you anticipate them to refer people to you or you all to work directly with one another on a regular basis?
So we do have a direct law enforcement drop-off area at our 707 Crisis Care Center so that individuals that may be picked up by Detroit Police or any other police department in Wayne County are able to come and work with us in a very quick way. And so they're able to kind of get in and out of the building, and our goal is under 15 minutes, and they get back out into the community working with folks. And so we anticipate being able to partner with them, honestly, on a daily basis. We do serve both voluntary and involuntary individuals on our adult unit. Sometimes folks are just in a place where they're not fully capable of saying yes to services, but maybe in a place where they do still need the service. And so for those individuals, we are still able to serve them and work with the police department to make sure that they're safe.
And excuse me, a lot of people right now, especially we've been hearing in the news and just talking to different medical professionals, just about mental stability right now. A lot of depression is happening, especially with younger people, especially with kids that we didn't notice we're having issues right now. So can we go into a little bit the teen aspect and bringing in kids and young people to kind of advocate for themselves and learn how to advocate for themselves?
Yeah, definitely. So, unfortunately, we have seen a rise in some of those teen or youth individuals that are expressing more anxiety, depression, suicidal thoughts, those types of things, which is why we were so dedicated to opening a child and family unit at our 707 Crisis Care Center. And so, like I mentioned, that unit does serve ages 5 to 17, and will be able to serve anyone that may be experiencing mental health or substance use services. And so for us, it's really about doing that early intervention, getting folks stabilized and connected to ongoing resources so they're able to rejoin their classmates and rejoin and get back going on their goals.
And Grace, you've been doing this work for a while now, and the Integrated Health Network has been expanding its outreach, like we just talked about, bringing in the kids and bringing in that focus on children and families. It's allergy season, so excuse me with the clearing of the throat. But I'm curious, in what cases where people have improved? I mean, you just talked about early intervention. In what ways have you all just seen, in general, the improvements with more mental health services available to residents?
So I think that something that's really important to think about is that it's always just adding a new tool to the toolbox, right? We know these services are needed, and they're needed on such a large scale that Detroit Wayne Integrated Health Network is really just trying to add as many tools to the toolbox for the citizens of the county. And so for us, the importance is, how many times is someone in a crisis and how many times does that person know where to go? And I think that's the key and the piece that we're really trying to focus on right now, because if you have all of these follow-up services, that's wonderful. But if your only option is going to the emergency department, which is not built for experiencing those behavioral health crises, it's really a physical health crisis facility, then, are you ever able to get to those follow-up services? So we're really, in a sense, trying to put some of that preventative care in with these crisis services to get people earlier in on their experience to make sure that they're connected long-term to be successful.
Grace Wolf, Vice President of Crisis Services at Detroit Wayne Integrated Health Network. As always, thank you so much for joining us on the Metro and spreading the message of what you all are doing right now. So we'll talk to you soon.
Thank you so much.
It's the Metro on 101.9 WDET, and coming up, we'll talk about a Detroit Lions portrait art series that's being showcased for the NFL Draft.
This is the Metro on 101.9 WDET FM. I'm Tia Graham.
And I'm Nick Austin. And Tia, as you know, the eyes of the sports world are on Detroit this weekend as the city hosts the 2024 NFL Draft. Now, while the event showcases the best and up-and-coming football talent that all the teams are looking to draft, it's also providing an opportunity for Detroit to showcase its own homegrown talent and artistic flair. One big example is, in more ways than one, the series of larger-than-life photographs of Detroit Lions players adorning downtown buildings created by fine art photographer Lisa Spindler. To learn more about the story behind the portraits and their meaning, we're joined by Lisa. Lisa, welcome to the Metro.
Good morning. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, I'm glad to have you here too, because we've all walked down there. We've seen these photos, maybe didn't know the story behind them. I was kind of wondering myself. So can you explain to us what this photo series is and how it even came about in the first place?
Well, actually, it was everything aligned in this project. Back in January, I was talking to a friend of mine. He said, you should really photograph the Lions. And it was before they went to the Super Bowl. And I had an opportunity to meet Rod Wood from the Lions. He purchased some of my artwork for his home and hadn't talked to him in a long time. So I sent him an email and said I had an idea. I'd like to really photograph the Lions. And he said, I'm very busy right now because they were going to the Super Bowl, but we can talk about it after. I said, that's great. And then Bedrock was working on their plans for the NFL and asked if I had any ideas. And actually, I went back into my archive of over 30 years ago, and I had photographed many athletes, Jim Brown, Joe Montana, Sergei Fedorov, a lot. And so I went and did some mock-ups, made some Xeroxes on the buildings of Detroit, and presented it to Bedrock. And I said, I reached out to the Lions. I really want to do the portraits of the Lions to honor them, whether they win or they don't go to the Super Bowl. We love them. I've seen the spirit of the city. And let's celebrate and welcome the people coming here for the NFL Draft and blow them up large so we can all, enjoy who these men are. Yeah. And by Bedrock reaching out to the Lions and working with Emily and Jessica Dahl and Francesca George, we created a plan to make this project happen. And I can tell you the best part about it was that the players, when I was given 15 minutes, I was a little surprised.
A little tight on time.
Real tight,
there, huh?
yep.
Yeah.
But I had to develop a very good team, which I did. We had 15 minutes, and the players arrived in their own clothes, no clothing changes. And that was the best part because I could see the individual personality of each player and try to capture that.
It's interesting because in football, since players wear helmets, they're all wearing the same outfit. Sometimes people can say, we wish there was more individuality in the sport. Some say that's what they like about it, that it's this real team aspect. By you creating the series, though, you kind of, like you mentioned, get to look at these different players and their individuality. Was that something you were trying to accomplish with your photography series, or what were the elements you were really trying to key in on with this art?
So with 6 people working with me on this team, I knew quickly I worked with a few of them. The others I did not know, but I reached out and said, what is the best team we can develop? I knew I needed each person on my team to do their part. The lighting person, the stylist, etc. So I said, nobody, touch the players. Let's just talk to them, ask them some questions about their life, get them comfortable. And I really just thought all these years of training that I've had, I'm in my 60s now, and I should be able to take a really good portrait after so many experiences I've had in a short time. That's one of the things I've been very good at. And I thought this is the time to really try to get through and capture something of the humanity, the beauty of the men as individual men, and just to get to a soulful feeling that could project through the camera to me.
Yeah.
And so that's what I was really looking for that. I didn't know what I was going to, but each person was so different.
Yeah.
So I was very happy the way they.
Well, they are stunning. They're very big, of course, since they're on these buildings. And I say that as someone who, I know there's a lot of amateur shutter bugs out there. I consider myself one of them, love getting the gear. But then when you see the portraits, separating what makes a good portrait from a great one can be kind of daunting. So for you, as someone who's been doing it, as you said, for so many years out there, what are the key elements to creating an amazing photo?
So in this case, I think technically that part was what I needed help with. I rented a very high-end Sony camera. It's called a mirrorless camera. And I thought it's important to mention, like, it took the best of what I could do because I knew these would be going big. If in this case, I felt it was very important that they were sharp and that technically they were right. So that's when I relied on the experts that I work with to help me with that. I think it's a combination of the lighting. The lighting was a one-source lighting. It was just a very simple portrait. I tried to keep it as simple and not complicated and work with the person as much as I could. To me, the success of it was a combination of the lighting, the equipment we chose and the lenses, and the backdrops also. So I didn't have a graphic designer or a prop stylist that worked with me on those areas, but it really was thought out ahead of time. I had 3 different sets going in one room.
And, when you look at these portraits, I see some in black and white. I see some in color. I see some where it's just the face. I see when there's someone smiling. I see someone with a more stern look. And you're getting different looks from different players here. Why did you decide to use those portraits in that different style for this series?
So actually, I saw the buildings. Bedrock gave me a list of buildings, and I would walk around. I documented all the buildings prior. And what the hardest part was choosing, editing. The editing process was quite grueling, trying to figure out, 2 players shouldn't be looking straight at you next to each other, or maybe that was powerful. Which pictures do I choose for black and white? Black and white is something that I specialize in, and I was trained in film in the 70s and the 80s, so my preference was to do everything in black and white, but I knew that the color was so beautiful. So the combination of them and then how they were laid out next to each other, that's what took a lot of time, the post-production part of it, and the layout and how they flowed and the feelings, because there were a lot of happy pictures with some of the players. But then I felt some of the players were a little shy and they were more comfortable just being not as smiling. They were just very comfortable looking at the camera and working with me. So I think the hardest part was figuring out which ones do we blow up. Or I'd look at a building that had a lot of doors and windows, and it was very concise how the faces would lay on, let's say, the CompuWare building with the true black and whites really big of Jared Goff and Aleem. That worked
McNeil,
great.
defensive tackle. Different sizes between those two guys too, right?
But those were the only 2 pictures that worked for that particular, only 2 of all the hundreds of pictures we took. Those 2 were the only 2.
We're speaking with Lisa Spindler, a fine art photographer and artist born right here in Detroit, based here in Detroit. And Lisa, you mentioned, first of all, renting a camera, which I was like, wow, thinking that, someone who does photography so much wouldn't necessarily have their own digital camera, and also having training in film. And right now we have this love of analog that seems to be coming back. So for you, film photography versus digital, what are your thoughts on the differences between the 2?
So it's interesting. I still have my entire archive, my first assignment from high school that I had shot with a pinhole camera on film. I have all my negatives pretty much from the 70s, the 80s. So I was very lucky to be trained in film, processing in the darkroom and doing my own printing, and then transitioning into digital when that transition happened. So I've been able to combine the 2 in some projects. And then each project, for example, this is a very special project. I'm not set up as a portrait photographer or in a photo studio. I have a studio and I'm a working fine art photographer and artist. So this was like, I knew that I didn't have the most state-of-the-art equipment, and I felt in this case it was worth investing the time to learn it quickly and rely on the professionals that I work with, my assistants and Andre and Carl, to help bring that to life. So I think my knowledge, I'm very lucky that I grew up and I'm able to know lighting very well from those days we worked very hard in film. And now digital seems so easy, but at the same time, it's very technical, and it can get very complicated. And I just try to keep it stripped down and simple from my training.
All right. Well, are there any upcoming projects or exhibitions that you have coming up? Anything that's that you're looking to do in the near future?
Well, this is going to be a long project, but my another project that my heart is into is I'd like to do. I'm working on a book, and it's going to take some time. But I've been documenting Detroit now for over 10 years, and the reconstruction, the rebuilding of the city. I wouldn't say rebirth, because I think it's never died. It's always been there. But just watching the rebuilding of it, and I've been able to capture moments to me that are historical now that I have not shared with the public. And for the future, I hope that I will be able to spend some time and produce a beautiful book as my love letter to Detroit.
All right. Well, if you ever do need another camera to borrow, we might be able to work out a trade deal or something, Lisa. So
Okay.
we'll exchange contact information afterwards. But Lisa Spindler, fine art photographer and artist, thank you so much for joining us on the Metro.
Thank you.
Lisa's Detroit Lions portrait series is scheduled to remain displayed downtown through May 19th. So if you haven't had a chance to check it out, feel free to go down there and take it in, whether during the draft or after, if you want to dodge a little bit of the riffraff. This is the Metro.
This is the Metro on 1019 WDET FM. You just heard from Nick Austin, and I'm Tia Graham. Now, this month marks the 10th anniversary of the event that led to the Flint water crisis. And the questions remain 10 years later. Is Flint's water safe to drink? Reporter Steve Carmody went to Flint to follow the story.
On April 25, 2014, then Flint Mayor Dane Walling pressed the button symbolically switching the city's drinking water source to the Flint River. He then toasted the switch with plastic glasses filled with tap water.
Here's to Flint.
Here's the flag. Here it is.
Here's Dane Walling today, nearly a decade after he was voted out of office.
I have a great deal of shame and regret about that ceremony because of everything that came after.
And what came after was improperly treated river water that damaged pipes that created the lead-contaminated, undrinkable drinking water. The decision to switch from Detroit's water system to the Flint River was made by a state emergency manager appointed by then-Governor Rick Snyder. The intent was to save money and fix the city's multi-million-dollar budget deficit. The result was hundreds of millions of dollars spent to fix the water system and help the community heal. Snyder was later criminally charged along with about a dozen other government officials in connection with the crisis. But problems with two separate state investigations eventually led to all the charges being dropped. A spokeswoman for the former governor said he is not doing interviews on Flint water. While the criminal case has fallen apart, there's been success for Flint residents in civil courts. In 2021, the state of Michigan, the city of Flint, and some businesses agreed to settle tens of thousands of claims brought by Flint residents. The settlement pot has grown to more than $650 million. But the process of determining who's eligible for a share of the settlement has dragged on much longer than expected. The special master appointed to oversee the review process said this month she hopes the initial phase will be complete by the end of June. An attorney involved in the settlement hopes the first checks will go out by the end of this year. Is Flint's tap water safe to drink? That question remains 10 years later. The answer to that is complex, says Eric Oswald. He's the director of the Drinking Water Division of the Michigan Department of Environment, Great Lakes, and Energy. Oswald says tests of Flint's tap water continue to show the presence of lead, but the levels are within federal and state standards.
Safe means different things to different people. So the definition of safe that we use is the standards that are contained in the Safe Drinking Water Act, and those are changing.
This fall, the EPA is expected to update regulations that would give most cities until the late 2030s to replace lead pipes connecting homes and businesses to city water mains. Critics contend the process does not have to take that long. Since the water crisis, replacing lead pipes has been a priority in Flint. Since 2016, the city has replaced more than 10,000 lead service lines. But a federal judge recently found Flint in civil contempt for failing to meet a deadline to remove all of the city's lead service lines. There could be hundreds of lead pipes still underground, though the exact number is unclear. And it's not just Flint. There are an estimated 9 million lead service lines in need of replacement across the U.S. Outside Greater Holy Temple Church in Flint, a forklift is shifting pallets. Cars and trucks are lined up about a mile down the road, waiting for the church's weekly drive-through food pantry. The food pantry started during the early days of Flint's water crisis for people in need of bottled water. Cases of canned water and loose water bottles are still the first thing to run out. 82-year-old Carol Harris has been here every week since 2016, when she stopped using Flint water.
I don't drink it. I don't cook with it. I don't trust it. Not at all. No. They say it's okay, but I bet they're not drinking it.
So safe or not, repairing Flint residents' trust in the city's tap water will likely take much longer than fixing the system itself.
That was reporter Steve Carmody. This is The Metro.
It's a Metro on 101.9 WDET, and coming up, we'll talk about a new art exhibit that celebrates the lovable losers among us. You'll find out what that means when we return. It's the Metro on 101.9 WDET. I'm Nick Austin.
And I'm Tia Graham. And, you know, sometimes I think to myself, you'll have better luck winning the lottery. I say that to myself often. It's one of my favorite snarky replies. And it goes perfectly with our next segment. The Loser Show is an immersive exhibition that's constructed with thousands of losing lottery tickets. Detroit artist Laura Kwatrotsky, yes, got it, exhibit will open May 4th with the goal of visually reinterpreting a familiar habit, leaving viewers asking questions about luck, loss, and hope. The show is being curated by DMJ Studio and Andy Arts, an art gallery in the Dexter Finkel neighborhood. To talk about the exhibit, we have Joshua Bissett here. Thank you so much for joining the show, Joshua.
Thank you.
And we also have Laura, who is the artist of The Loser Show. Laura, thank you for being here.
Thank you for having me.
So I saw some of the images, I saw some of the pictures, I see the thousands of lottery tickets that you've been able to collect. Talk about The Loser Show.
Yeah, so The Loser Show is kind of like my response to just finding a lot of loser tickets in the beginning, like on the street. So I started collecting them. And that's kind of what started making me think about the lotto, the lottery, the losing the money, becoming a loser. So that's kind of like what I came out with. That's my response to sort of this medium.
So, you know, especially for journalists and just around here as well, we used our surroundings to gather information for stories in the future, just kind of pulling out from what we're seeing around us. And that's what you were doing. You're walking down the street, you're like, what? There are a lot of lottery tickets lying around. So when we think about just using our environments around us to create art, how would you tell people to do something like that? Because that's exactly what you did.
I just keep my eyes open.
Yeah.
You just notice what you see. You're not on your phone. You're just present, and that's how you you listen to your environment. In that way, you know, you kind of see things. You talk to people. You observe. I observe people go inside the stores and scratching off the tickets. So this is like, because I was noticing so many tickets on the ground, and then that's when I started thinking about it, and that's when I started noticing all the people that were doing this.
Which is big business here, especially in the city of Detroit, just lottery tickets and the lottery lines, and just thinking about that, just waiting behind someone who has the long list of lottery they're going to be playing. But Joshua, just bringing you in really quickly, because you talked a little bit about just your neighbors. You know, Laura, you talked about being around and just being immersed. I think about Andy Arts, and I think about where it's located and the community that it's located in. So if you could just expand on that, Joshua, Andy Arts itself and the community which houses it.
Sure. Andy Arts is located at 3000 Finkel Street, and We're surrounded by a beautiful community, which has welcomed us over these last 7 years. And the name comes from one of our neighbors, Mr. Andy Jones, who we met the day we came. And he's a 83-year-old gentleman who's lived on the block for 40 years, and he's been cleaning the streets around there for the last 40 years. And he's just really kept up the spirit of optimism in Detroit. And Laura had the idea of linking our project there to Mr. Jones now and in the future, just to build upon this story of optimism in the neighborhood. And it's been a super supportive community to us. We have young people coming in, making their first rap video. We have choreographers, showcases, kids who are trying to create hip hop dance. So it's really, there's been an enormous demand in our space, just remarkable creative output.
Yeah, I was
in our neighbors. Yeah,
Josh, that's one of my questions. Actually, is just the partnerships that you all have been able to build within that community. You have Detroit Horsepower. You also have the Fenwood Market, and you have the community partnership. Like I said, Detroit is different. So you've been able to find other nonprofits and other community-based organizations to partner with and help bolster that community. What has that done for both of you? Laura, I'm going to have you answer after Josh, but Josh, go ahead and start with us.
Yeah, like for example, Kari Frazier of Detroit is different. He kind of views our space as sort of his indoor space. He hosts his annual Detroit is Different festival at Andy Arts. We also host monthly community meetings facilitated by Hope Village Revitalization, where they bring out all sorts of community members to talk about everything from like lung health to what's going on with the streets in our neighborhood to traffic problems. So Andy Arts is really becoming sort of like community hub at the same time as it's an art center.
Laura, same thing. When we talk about just being in the community, learning from who's around you, I just heard the beautiful story why Andy Arts has his name in the first place, Andy Jones. You think about this community and the people that you've been able to impact and those who've impacted you. What do you want them to know about The Loser Show?
I want them to come and have fun. It's a very light environment that I created, and I'm asking them to participate, and by doing things, by crumbling tickets, by filling a piggy bank, by playing Wheel of Fortune, and I have some of my big pieces are gonna be raffled. So they're actually winning.
Yeah.
Winning big. But yeah, that's sort of I'm bringing lightness to this. I know it can be tragic, but I'm creating the show because I'm gathering all this energy, which is, they're loser tickets, but they're also hopes. People are hoping to win, and I just, and the feeling of losing, it's not just losing in general. There's so much concentration on celebrity and likes nowadays, and I feel like, let's just all gather and with this energy about, this is about, let's focus on losing and not on winning for once, and let's just be all together and have fun with that. And that's sort of what I'm interested.
That's one of the main reasons I had you both come in. It's just I wanted to know a little bit about just the Loser Show and the idea of having hope. And that's such an important thing in the city of Detroit, is to remain hopeful. It's something that we think about often, hustling harder, staying positive, remaining hopeful as much as possible. So before I let both of you go, just one of the biggest things, Joshua, what do you want to take away to be from not just the Loser Show, but of course the Loser Show, which is premiering May 4th. May the 4th be with you, but not just the Loser Show, but just Andy Arts and some of the things that you all have been able to offer to the community.
Right. We really want Andy Arts to be just really a home for Detroiters who are just wanting to do anything creative. We have a huge open space that's well equipped, but not corporate, very friendly, very open and warm. And reach out to us, contact us, and we're here to make things happen.
Awesome. And same thing, Laura, what do you want one of the biggest takeaways to be from the Loser Show, other than the conversation, the hopefulness? But, what would you want people when they come to the space, maybe they're coming to the space for the first time, what do you want them to take away from it?
I just want them to have fun and to feel like this is a celebration of being together. And so many different kind of people that play lottery. And maybe my show can bring all these different people together and in this moment, and they can look at each other and they can play, and they can,
all experience a common ground in some space. So I love that so much. I want to say thank you to Joshua Bissett. He's the co-director of Andy Arts in Detroit. And we have Laura Kwiatkowski. Yes. Thank you so much for joining us on the Metro. Laura is the Detroit artist and creator of The Loser Show, which is opening up at Andy Arts on Finkel. This is, you said 3000 Finkel Street in Detroit, and it's happening May 4th. Thank you both so much for being here.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
It's the Metro on 101.9 WDET. I'm Nick Austin. That was Tia Graham talking about The Loser Show. Could you believe that I had a coach who would tell me back in the day, second place is first loser? As if you're running a race out in track. I mean, how disparaging could that be? We're trying to get wins out here, but the Tigers did not succeed. No, they lost to the Tampa Bay Rays 7-5 at Tropicana Field. A lot of losing. Maybe they should go to the Loser Show as well. Get some inspiration and a chance to win one of the exhibits. So even getting a chance to win based on others' losses, we can commiserate together. We can have a good time. Folks, we'll be having a good time at the NFL Draft this evening. We are looking forward to that as well. But of course, parking for the draft can be a little bit difficult, and Detroit officials are urging people attending the NFL Draft to get downtown early if they want to find decent parking for the event. The draft begins again tonight and runs through Saturday, so plenty of time to see some of the cool things happening and walking around. Just make sure you're planning for it, or even better, maybe take a shuttle. I've had some great success with the Q line back in the day. That might be the move for you as well. Point is, a lot of things happening, and we're excited about all of that. But another thing that we have happening here is our Curiosity series, where we answer the questions that you have about Detroit and things around it. And one of those are Vernors. It's something that I think we all know, but how much can Vernors ginger ale cure? There's this old wives' tale that you'll hear from people. Perhaps you are one of those as well, using it as kind of a catch-all, but can it cure anything at all? On our latest episode of Curiosity, WDET's Amanda LeClaire investigated the rumored health benefits of Vernors. The episode was kicked off by a question from Ashley Fassett.
Why do Metro Detroiters think that Vernors the Pop is the cure-all for all ailments?
Vernors Ginger Ale is one of America's oldest soft drinks, born right here in Detroit, Michigan. According to legend, it all began in 1866 with James Verner, a local pharmacist who concocted a bold ginger-based syrup. As legend has it, when called away to the Civil War, Verner stored his special mixture in an oak cask. 4 years later, he returned to discover it had transformed, aged into ginger ale with a uniquely spicy, zesty flavor that was an instant hit in Detroit and beyond.
Because it's a one-of-a-kind soft drink. Why don't you tell them, boys? Vernors. It's the one-of-a-kind soft drink. With the one-of-a-kind.
Regrettably, that story is simply legend. In the book The Vernor Story, From Gnomes to Now, author Lawrence Rusch wrote that the formula was likely not invented until after the Civil War. Whatever the timeline, the soda was celebrated for its potent ginger kick. Vernors gained a reputation as an easy-to-swallow medicine, believed to settle stomachs, and, according to lore, more. To answer Ashley's question, I first wanted to see if it was true that many Metro Detroiters and their families have a history of turning to Vernors when under the weather. Spoiler alert, it is.
Hi, this is John McPhail. Yes, Vernors hot. Vernors hot. Hot Vernors for your upset stomach, or actually it was probably more so for your colds than that.
My name is Mike Daniels. Yes, and it was Verner's. It was Verner's and a little bit of liquor. We called it Hot Toddy. Yes.
My name is Lisa Williams. I'm in Detroit, and my go-to for my parents was always Verner's ginger ale. That was the magic cure.
So drinking Verner's when ill is a family tradition for generations of Detroiters. But does it really work? And if so, why? To answer that question, I turn to a professional. Full disclaimer, this is not medical advice. Consult your doctor for that.
Yes, 100% Verner's is going to cure everything that's going on with you.
That's Dr. Eli Eisman, family medicine resident at Henry Ford Health System. And he's kidding, in a way.
In reality, probably not Verner's, but some of the constituent parts that may have been in Verner's originally, like the original recipe that had ginger in it. You know, ginger has this long-standing history of being recognized for its medicinal value, and it has this super interesting ethnopharmacology history as well. Ginger is one of those plant medicines that shows up in many traditional and indigenous medicine practices, as well as in culinary heritages from around the world.
That's right. It's the ginger part of ginger ale that does, in fact, serve as plant medicine. Ginger is known as an antibacterial and has mild laxative properties, perfect for nauseous tummies. Unfortunately, Verner's has evolved from its original recipe and ditched the ginger. Though today's recipe no longer contains real ginger, Metro Detroiters still swear by it as a cure for everything from stomach aches to colds, even hangovers. Dr. Lynn Smitherman is a pediatrician in Detroit who's been practicing for more than 30 years. She says many of her patients' families tell her Verner's is a must when someone's feeling out of sorts.
The medicinal effects of ginger in Verner's and in other ginger ales is pretty much non-existent. That said, a lot of people think it feels good, and that's perfectly fine. If my grandmother came up to me with a warm ginger ale, if I wasn't feeling well, I would definitely accept it. And it may or may not help, but sometimes that and a little TLC can go a long way.
And that's the conclusion of both Dr. Smitherman and Dr. Eisman. Verner's, as it is today, has little to no medicinal value. But the value of nostalgia, comfort, TLC, and family tradition is its own kind of medicine.
That was the latest episode of Curiosity, produced and reported by WDET's Amanda LeClaire. You can find episodes of Curiosity at WDET.org or wherever you get your podcasts.
This is The Metro. I'm Tia Graham. Just heard from Nick Austin. Coming up, we'll talk about the NFL Draft and what you need to know to navigate the city today and this weekend. Stay right there.
It's The Metro on 101.9 WDET. I'm Nick Austin.
And I'm Tia Graham. Just taking a look at the forecast today. Sunny skies with a high near 55. Tonight we'll see a low around 38. Temperatures will increase over the weekends. Friday looking pretty good. Sunny with a high around 66. And Saturday and Sunday we'll see highs in the mid 70s to low 80s both days. So that's really, really something to rejoice in this weekend. And speaking of this weekend, or speaking of today, the NFL Draft kicks off tonight. The first round will start at 8 p.m. And that means a lot of people will be flocking into downtown Detroit. WDET's Alex McLennan reported on the important logistics fans need to know how to navigate the city.
The city of Detroit thinks about 300,000 people will make their way downtown on the first night of the NFL Draft alone. That means a busy weekend with big crowds. And with buildings like Ford Field only able to hold about 60,000 people, organizers are holding the event on city streets, free for the public to attend. Christopher Moyer of Visit Detroit says the main stage will be in Cadillac Square.
That's where the draft picks are going to cross the stage, where Commissioner Goodell is going to be announcing who the Lions are picking and 31 other teams.
That footprint will extend into Campus Martius and south to Hart Plaza, where the NFL Draft Experience fan zone will be set up. That part of downtown is expected to draw the most people. If that's where you want to go, you will need to plan ahead. Mayor Mike Duggan says you won't be able to find nearby parking right before the event begins.
You're going to need to think about an experience that's different than you're used to going to a football game. And unless you're going to be here at 9 or 10 in the morning, the idea of driving into downtown and parking is probably not realistic.
Detroit will operate shuttles from 3 lots around the city that will take fans up to the draft perimeter, while smart shuttles coming from the suburbs connect you to the People Mover. You could also park in Midtown or New Center and take the Q line part of the way down Woodward Avenue. Another tactic is ride-sharing services, which Duggan says he used when visiting the draft in other cities.
Uber and Lyft took you to the perimeter of the crowd, dropped you off, and then you walked quite a ways, but it worked fine.
However, if you want to experience the NFL draft, you don't need to make it all the way to Campus Martius. The festivities will be spread around town, as Christopher Moyer explains.
The totality of the NFL draft experience is going to be stretching from Greektown to Eastern Market, through parks in and around the Central Business District. Then you also stretch out into Corktown as well.
Moyer says there will be activities as far up Woodward Avenue as the Fox Theater. Large video boards will be set up in many places so you can view the draft live with other fans no matter where you end up.
We're talking dozens of screens all over the city.
Law enforcement from several agencies will patrol downtown to keep things running smoothly. The draft isn't supposed to draw quite as many people as Detroit's annual summer fireworks, but Police Chief James White says the fireworks are a different kind of event.
Most of everyone's looking up at the sky, and at the end of that 35-minute display, people leave. This is a 3-day event.
White says his department will be ready for any crowd size because nobody really knows what total attendance for the weekend will be. The NFL has only taken the draft on the road a handful of times, and recent venues like Las Vegas and Kansas City haven't had as many neighboring fan bases close by. For Detroit, supporters of teams in Indianapolis, Chicago, Cleveland, Cincinnati, and Pittsburgh are within a reasonable drive.
These are big football towns, and we anticipate seeing those numbers flood the city of Detroit for all 3 days and participate in the event.
Once fans make it into the city, Mayor Duggan says moving from one area to another could prove to be tricky.
You want to go from Capitol Park to Greektown. I think a lot of folks here are going to discover something called the Detroit People Mover.
He says taking the elevated rail system that circles around downtown is probably a better bet than pushing through crowds near the draft main stage.
If you want to join friends on the other side, that's going to be the fastest way to get there.
City officials say the People Mover will operate around the clock during the draft weekend, with trains coming every 5 minutes. If you do want to make it into the main stage area, gates will open at noon on Thursday and Friday. They'll open at 9 a.m. on Saturday.
That was WDET's Alex McLennan reporting on how best to get around the city during the NFL draft, which once again starts at 8 p.m. tonight. Already seeing some traffic along Woodward Avenue and Midtown as well. Starting to see a little slowdowns as people are coming in from 75 down there, from Oakland County as well. We see some traffic along 94. So just watch out for some of those slowdowns as you are headed to downtown Detroit this evening. However, that's the Metro for Thursday,
the Metro.
April 24th. You can listen to recent episodes online at WDET.org and make sure to subscribe to the podcast on your favorite platform.
The show is produced by Sam Corey, David Lyons, and Jack Philbrandt. Our engineer is Nate Bender.
The Metro is a production of WDET. It's a listener-supported service of Wayne State University. If you like what you hear and you want to support the Metro, consider becoming a member at WDET.org/donate.
This is WDET-FM, Detroit Public Radio, your connection to news, music, and conversation. Thanks for listening, and we'll talk to you tomorrow.
Bundle up tonight if you go to the draft.
WDET is supported by the College of Business Administration at University of Detroit Mercy. UDM is offering a new master's degree in ethical leadership focused on sustainable, ethical, and inclusive problem solving. More information at business.udmercy.edu.